Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Wroxhill Media's webinar briefings with senior journalists, the first of our autumn series. And I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Ian King, the presenter of the eponymous Ian King Live, but also one of Sky News' leading business journalists. Ian King, thank you very much for joining us. And if you're wanting to catch up on future Wroxhill webinar events, then probably the best place to get those is on our Tomorrow's Business email. So sign up to that if you're not already getting it, and also on our Twitter channel, Wroxhill Media. But anyway, Ian, thank you for joining us after your show this morning. You're on at 10 o'clock. That's relatively new, and you're on for a full hour. Tell us a little bit about why the new time and the impact it's had on how you produce the programme.
Thanks, Michael. Well, this is the latest change in the schedules for us. When I joined Sky News, we went out 6:30 in the evening, Monday to Thursday. The beginning of 2018, we moved to a slot at 1:30, half an hour, and we picked up a Friday show there, so we 1:30 Monday to Friday. And then really it was when the pandemic took hold in the spring that our ratings improved very, very dramatically. The ratings went right up, partly I think because a lot more people were working from home, and Sky News decided to give us an extra half hour of dedicated business news every day. So we started putting out another half an hour show that went out at 9:30 in the mornings, and from the 1st of September the channel has rejigged the schedule. So instead of two half-hour shows at 9:30 and 1:30, we've now gone to an hour-long format from 10 to 11 every day. And the thinking behind that was really because what they've noticed during the sort of pandemic and the associated lockdown period is that the audience builds more gradually throughout the day. And obviously the business, the breakfast audience is pretty important to Sky News as a channel. That's where you get some of the biggest audiences of the day. But they were finding during the lockdown period, with more people working from home, particularly I guess with the schools closed as well, that the audience was building more slowly throughout the day, and therefore there was a feeling that we could build on quite a strong audience inherited from Kate Burley at breakfast. And that we accordingly, it was also making sense at that point for us to go out and give the show for a full hour. So that's really where it's come from.
And you've seen it last week, so it's quite early days to see how that's working out. But at the same time, the full hour must give you a little bit more flexibility about how you put the show together as well.
Yeah, it does. I mean, there are swings and roundabouts. I mean, one thing that a lot of the audiences have picked up. One thing I've had from a lot of people is they mourn the loss of the 1:30 show, particularly because we were doing a lot of breaking news out of the United States. For example, every Friday we could do non-farm payrolls. One Friday a month. Every Thursday we were doing the new US jobless claims, which is obviously a key piece of data during this crisis. So we can't break those live on air. But I think having an hour-long format gives us a lot more flexibility in other ways. For a start, the fact that we go out half an hour later every morning means that Scott and Ganesh, my producers, they have a little more time to try and line up guests for big breaking news stories of the day. And it also gives us a bit more flexibility in terms of some of the interviews that we do. For example, this morning we led the show with Michael O'Leary from Ryanair, and we were able to give him a good 6 minutes, whereas previously he'd have probably only got 4.5 minutes at best. And when you've got guests of the quality and caliber of Michael O'Leary, you want to be able to give them as much time as you possibly can. So that has worked to our advantage. And then also we've been able to incorporate other features such as a review of the business pages, and that really picks up on the fact that previously Adam Bolton was doing All Out Politics in that slot, and obviously a very popular feature of Adam's show, All Out Politics, was a review of the newspapers. And so it's been nice that we've been able to sort of do our own little version of that with the King Live.
Indeed. Now, you mentioned earlier that you've been in an evening slot for a long time. It must be a big change being at the front end of the day, whereas instead of reacting to the news, you're part of the agenda setting.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, and that was actually why John Riley, the head of Sky News, and decided to move us to that slot in the first place. The feeling was that, I mean, we do get very good guests, we get very high caliber guests on the show, but the problem is going out at 6:30 in the evening. The rest of the news operation wasn't always equipped to pick up and run with those sort of stories where we did get those great guests and those great news lines. Whereas going out earlier in the day, the feeling was that the rest of the operation could respond to that, incorporate grabs from the show into, sorry, that's a bit of jargon, extracts from interviews, and incorporate those into packages that were being produced for wider output. And it also means that we're right across the other strands to our output, our digital platforms, and obviously Sky News Radio, which is doesn't get talked about as much as it should be. It's an enormous beast in its own right, and is listened to by around 8 million people every day, because it's syndicated out to most of the UK's commercial radio stations. So that's a really important part of the business as well. And as I say, we're involved with that more deeply than we could have been previously.
But that's a very strong message to our guests on the who are joining us from the comms community, that there's a session on Ian King has an ability to be sort of ripple out across your other channels.
That's very much the aim. That's the intention. Yes.
Now, is it a struggle reacting to breaking news in the market with your slot, or just give us a little insight into the production process of how you line up your guests and how the bookings are made?
Well, we've got, as I say, Scott Beasley is our senior producer. Ganesh Rao is the other producer, and we've actually been given a third producer when we went up to 2 shows a day, which was Chloe Colpin. She's on maternity leave now, and so some people out there may know Chloe because she does a lot of stuff with the Times' business podcasts. Chloe's on, as I say, on maternity leave right now. So in the meantime, a chap called Josh Hornsey has joined the team as well. And invariably, one of them will be trying to do forward planning, look ahead, and try and book guests for future events where we can see them coming up in the diary. But there's a fair bit of, it's all hands to the pump really when it comes to trying to get guests in on a live basis when there's a big breaking news story. And then there are other components to forward planning as well, such as who we're going to get to do the newspaper review slot. We're kind of edging our way there towards a sort of regular lineup of revolving reviewers, which I'm quite pleased about. Those who tuned in this morning will have seen Ollie Shah from the Sunday Times. He's done 2 of those now, so I think Touchwood Ollie will be a permanent fixture in terms of the business review slot. And we've also got Neil Collins, who was my first boss on Fleet Street many moons ago. Neil was on the show last Friday, and I'm very much hoping he's going to be one of our regulars as well. Jürgen Meyer from Siemens, formerly of Siemens. Jürgen has agreed to come on a semi-regular basis as well. So we've got some really good performers there who are prepared to come on. And then with the markets guests, we like to have a markets commentator every day. So there's an element of forward planning there, of course. The emphasis really, I guess, from now on is probably going to be more on Asia and Europe than on the United States, given the time we're going out now.
Are you looking for suggestions for the markets commentators, or are the market slots going to be themed and you pick people appropriate for the theme that you're going to focus on any one day?
Well, you try and keep it as live as you possibly can, to be honest with you. I mean, there are certain people who will always be very reliable performers in that slot. So, for example, Neil Wilson from Markets.com, Russ Mould from AJ Bell, Craig Erlam from Oanda. I mean, these are all very capable, solid people. We like to use economists where we can as well. So, for example, Karen Ward at JP Morgan, she's been on quite a lot. Sonia Loud from Legal & General Investment Management. We love having Sonia on because she's always got something to say. Paris Anand from Fidelity. We've got a sort of a regular, there are lots of people who we know we can call on for reliable, accurate and informed commentary and analysis for the market slot. But I'm always open to ideas by all means.
Now, Ian, you're joining us this morning from Fleet Place in the centre of London. just give us a feel for what the office is like, how long you've been back in, what's it like putting on your show during the crisis?
Well, yeah, we've had a fairly peripatetic existence on this program throughout. I mean, when I took over from Jeff Randall nearly 7 years ago now, we were based in the Gherkin. We left the Gherkin about 18 months into my tenure, and we did the show from Millbank in Westminster for 9 months. We then moved to a purpose-built facility in the News Building at London Bridge, and we left there last summer, July last year, and that was really partly because the contract was up, but also because Sky had obviously been taken over by Comcast there. We weren't part of, previously, of course, 21st Century Fox had a 40% shareholding in Sky. So we weren't part of the sort of the Murdoch empire anymore at that point, and we weren't able to get the studio facility at mates rates anymore. So it was a sort of natural sort of parting of the ways, really, in that sense. And at that point, Comcast obviously owned CNBC. They were able to find us some floor space here in Fleet Place. So we moved in there from August last year, and it's gone very, very successfully. I sort of rub shoulders with all my pals from CNBC every morning. But then, as you say, Michael, things really changed in February and March. There are not that many people here at the moment. I mean, obviously, CNBC's main broadcasting hours here, they're on air from 6 till 9 every morning with Squawk Box, and then from 9 till 10 they're doing World Exchange as well, and carrying on with European themed content. From 10 o'clock UK time, they hand over the baton to CNBC in the United States. So most of the presenters tend to go home. Some of the journalists kick around here for a bit longer, and the production staff. But most people have been working from home. There was a very big sales operation here, for example, from CNBC, and they've been working from home since March. So it's a lot quieter. And in terms of me and in what we do in this office, in the old days, either Scott or Ganesh or Chloe would be here with me in the office, and right now it's just me and my colleague Dave Clark, who's the technical director on the show, and it's just the pair of us working from here.
And you've been in there pretty much throughout all of the crisis. How have you found getting hold of guests? Normally, you'd like them to drop by and see you in just off Fleet Street.
Well, indeed. I mean, that was the beauty of it, and quite often actually coming in early as well. You'd sort of see people coming into the CNBC studio, and you could sort of say hello to them as well and have a nice chit chat with them. But CNBC and Sky, we both stopped having physical guests in here pretty early on in the lockdown. It might have even been before Boris Johnson even announced the lockdown. It was probably early March, I guess. So yes, we had to resort to doing guests remotely. And notwithstanding the teething troubles that you get, it's actually gone pretty well. I think CEOs seem to have more time on their hands when they're not having to go from one pointless meeting to another. A lot of them are working from home or working from their office, and it's fairly straightforward to sort of get them up on a line remotely once if they've got good people who can sort of point their way around the technology. And I think also another factor that's helped us, and I do genuinely believe this, I think a lot of businesses and a lot of CEOs have learned from what happened during the financial crisis, where you saw a lot of companies go missing, particularly probably the banks. And of course, they became public enemy number one subsequent to that. I think this time around, a lot of businesses have been much more proactive and thought, right, we've got to get on the front foot here, talk about what we're doing, how we're enabling our employees in the first instance to stay safe, how we're interacting with our clients and our customers. And really, obviously, the crisis has touched every form of life in that respect. So, for example, we've had Emma Walmsley from GSK, we've had Pascal Soriot from AstraZeneca talking about the initiatives that they're going on, the vaccine products that they're working on. We've had most of the big supermarket bosses on, with the exception of Dave Lewis at Tesco's, I should say. We've had them on talking about initially in the first instance how they were managing their supply chain issues, how they were keeping the shelves stacked during the rush when everyone was rushing to stockpile. I mean, you name it. We've had executives on from every walk of life who've been involved in this crisis.
One narrow techie point, but you broadcasters previously were zealots for getting in front of a high definition camera and having a good quality ISDN line. That's all gone out the window now, and you're able to cope with. Well, how do you do it? Are you using Zoom or?
We've used all sorts. We've used Skype actually. Skype has been the go-to technology for the channel, but it's being switched off in the near future. So I think we're moving to other things. There's a product called WebEx that we're using. We've been using Zoom, and actually, one that I'm quite keen to see more of is there's a British company called Starleaf, whose founder and CEO we've had on a couple of times on the show, most recently last Friday. And I have to say the picture that he had from up in Oxford was absolutely as clear as a bell. It was much better than anything you get from Zoom. I mean, you're dependent, of course, to an extent on the quality of the broadband infrastructure connection. The running joke that Scott and Dave and I have is that actually the further away from London you go, the better the broadband connection tends to be. If you're talking to someone down the road in West London, the picture tends not to be terribly clear at times, whereas we've had people from Africa and the picture's been absolutely the definition's been razor sharp, which is, as I say, that's a bit of a running joke on the programme with us.
Well, you're picking up a theme that Caroline Walker has asked about getting regional guests on the show, and presumably, this technology is going to help in the future.
Yeah, I mean, look, regional guests have always been very, very important to us. I mean, and it is indeed for Sky News as a whole. I mean, the channel has always been very, very clear that we don't want to be a sort of London-centric outlet, and I think the emphasis on that really gained momentum following the referendum vote, where obviously, the mainstream media, for want of a better phrase, was accused of not really being in tune with what people were saying outside of London. So that's been really critical to Sky News as a news organisation right across the piece. And if you look at our output, whether that's on our digital platforms, on the television or on radio, we've really gone out of our way to step up on that. So yeah, we take that side of things extremely seriously. But obviously, it's a business program. Most CEOs are based in London or New York or Hong Kong or Singapore.
Yeah. Anyway, we hope you are able to welcome back guests to the studio soon, not least so you could pick up a little gossip as you walk them into the studio. But can we turn now to the agenda? And you as a business journalist, this must be the biggest story of your career.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the financial crisis would be, but there you go. I mean, before that, I thought the .com boom probably would be. So yeah, it's just been extraordinary. I mean, world life has just been completely turned on its head, and every big business segment, every sector, as I said before, has not been immune to this. So it's just been an extraordinary period.
And is there any room for stories beyond the coronavirus? Presumably Brexit is now rearing its ugly head again.
Yeah, that's a very good way of putting it, Michael. Yeah, Brexit has certainly reared its ugly head as well. But I mean, if I think back to what we were talking about a lot before the before COVID-19, I mean, one thing that Scott and I and Ganesh are all very keen on are on the technology stories, and that is really the big story that was driving our agenda in no small way, even prior to COVID-19. Whether that's the move to net zero carbon, which obviously has vast implications for the energy sector and the oil and gas sector as well, and electricity transmission and infrastructure providers. It also feeds through into electrification for the car manufacturers. And the sort of trend generally towards digitization. And that has accelerated during COVID-19. I mean, no doubt everyone out there will have been having conversations where someone said to them, well, look, we've done what we thought we were going to do over the next 3 to 5 years in a matter of months. The world has really moved on in terms of embracing digitization, moving to digital platforms. That's really stepped up. And as I say, that was a big theme of ours even before COVID-19, and it's gained momentum now. So I think that will be a theme going forward. And also, we do to that end, we do a lot of interviews with startups. I mean, one thing that Scott and I have both been very keen to amplify over the years has been the fact that the UK is, I think, a great. It remains still a great place to start up businesses, to set up businesses. I think the younger generation. I mean, I've said this before at some of your events. I think even I think the current young generation, the sort of millennials, and now obviously you've got Gen Z coming up. I think they're the most entrepreneurial generation that this country has ever seen. I mean, old farts like me. I mean, I'd say old fart. I mean, I've changed jobs probably 5 or 6 times over the course of my career. But the notion where you could start at a business as a school leaver or as a college leaver or as a university graduate and stay there until you were 60, 65 and collect your gold watch or carriage clock at the end of a sort of 40-year career are long gone. And I think that has fed into the entrepreneurialism of the younger generation. They are far more willing to move around if they're not happy with the kind of job that they do. The demands that they have of their employers are far greater than they ever were before. I think they're more in transmit mode than receive mode. As I say, the older generations who were prepared to stay with 1 or 2 employers for life were probably quite, they would sort of be quite accepting of what their employers sort of foisted on them, and would say, okay, you're being transferred to the Cardiff office. That's from Monday. Off you go. Okay, boss. Right, we go. I think younger people are far less willing to sort of buy into that way of working. And indeed, you've seen it by the way that, for example, I mean, I've heard it from CEOs during this crisis. So it came up an awful lot after the Black Lives Matter protests got underway. Younger people really do want to hear from their employers what they're doing to take on bigotry and prejudice. And they have very high expectations of their employees in that regard. They want to know what their employers are doing in transition to net zero. And as I say, that's something that older generations don't have. So as I say, there are more sort of I don't know, uppity generation in some ways, but also very, very entrepreneurial. And I mean, that was a takeaway from me long before the pandemic, the fact that people are quite willing to go up and strike out on their own and set up on their own. And I find that very exciting. I mean, it means that Britain retains, hopefully, this sort of youthful entrepreneurial zeal in business.
No, exactly. Entrepreneurs make a good telly as well. You had one on your show this morning.
We did, wasn't she fantastic? Yeah.
She was great, and I can see why she was awarded that prize. But if we're looking at, well, I think a lot of the entrepreneurs, as you said earlier, were in the tech sector. I'm interested as well as your view on the other end of the tech sector, the big tech part of the market, and how you think they're addressing the regulatory challenges that are coming, and whether they're actually are they engaging with you? Are you finding it hard to get to those companies?
You are scratching away at a very, very sore point here, because my colleague Dave and I had to sit here in the office until late last night, hoping to do a down the line with Jack Dorsey from Square, who was announcing an initiative which the newspapers, only the Times has covered it this morning. Catherine Griffiths has written it up for the Times, so you'll have to reach for your Times to find out what the story was. We were hoping to speak to Jack Dorsey last night, and an overbearing American PR got in the way of that, and insisted that she sat in on the interview, which obviously in a digital format is a bit tricky, and they ended up pulling the interview. So I was quite peeved at that, to say the least. So yeah, some of the big guys are a bit difficult to get hold of. I mean, we've had over the years, we've spoken to the likes of Microsoft. They tend to be the sort of UK or North European head of the operations rather than the global CEOs, which is a bit unfortunate. But I hope over time we can address that. Amazon, for example, Microsoft. We've had these sort of businesses on in the distant past. Google, we've heard less from them actually during the pandemic for some reason, but I suspect that's more by accident than by design, if I'm honest. But as I say, Square are very much in my bad books at the moment.
No, but you mentioned overbearing PR. What would your general message be to an overbearing PR about engaging with Ian King live?
Well, I mean, hopefully they watch the program. Hopefully they know what we do. Hopefully, I mean, I've been in this game for getting on for 30 years now. So hopefully they know me. They know I'm a grown up, and I'm not going to do gotcha journalism for the sake of it. I mean, I've always been of the mindset that, I mean, this isn't like, and again, I've said this before at some of your events, Michael. You know, business people don't necessarily have to do telly. It's not like the politicians who will come on and will be slapped around, and then, you know, at the end of it, well, see you this time next week then, chief, and for more of the same. Business people don't have to do telly, so I'm always kind of cognizant that somewhere, you know, you've got to sit back and listen and let them say what they want to say before you can chip away at them and sort of explore individual aspects of it. So the worst PRs in that respect are the American ones who want to be controlling, who think that they can, who think they're the message actually, and quite often, half the time, they're just trying to justify their own existence by making a nuisance of themselves. Quite often, in my experience, the CEOs are perfectly capable of, they know what they want to talk about, and they know if they're dealing with a grown-up, they're perfectly happy to do so. The worst ones are these ones that sort of try and set parameters, like this American one did last night. Oh, you can only ask him about the project that the initiative we're announcing today. Well, you know, we'll be the judge of that. Jack Dorsey's a big boy. If he wants to come on and talk to a leading UK news outlet, then I'm sure he'll be quite happy to talk about other stuff as well. Unfortunately, we didn't get that chance. But the ones who try and set preconditions are normally told politely to go away.
Yeah. When you say business leaders don't need to do TV, well, maybe that's changing. And you talked a little bit earlier about it's a good way of feeding messages down to their younger employees. And I think TV is a very good way for CEOs to talk to their communities that are very close to home.
Yeah, completely agree with that. And yes, you're right. That has changed. As I say, that attitude has maybe changed a little during the pandemic. People do realise they have to be on the front foot. If you know, nature abhors a vacuum, and if you sit back and don't say anything, then other people are just going to do your talking for you. So I'd always say people have got to come on. And as I say, I mean, it's very interesting actually. I mentioned the banks with regard to the financial crisis. And several of the big banks, you know, I mean, Alison Rose from NatWest, I've lost count of the number of interviews that we've had with her during this crisis. She's been on the front foot right from the word go to sort of say, right, this is what we're doing. Here's how much money we are lending to our customers. We've had people from Barclays, corporate on in a similar vein. HSBC have been very good in that respect. The only one that have gone missing really to an extent is Lloyd's, and I think that was partly because they came in for so much flack during the outset of the crisis, where it seemed that they weren't really pulling their weight in terms of putting out T-bills loans. I think they've been slightly intimidated into not speaking out, whereas I would argue, and I've told people at Lloyd's this, you know, come on, you need to get on the show and tell us what you are doing, and if people are saying you're not pulling your weight in terms of getting money out there, you'd better start you know, this is your opportunity to talk about this sort of thing. And I think that's actually going to be increasingly important for the banks as we go forward, because a lot of these loans, let's face it, are going to go sour. And if I was a banking comms person, I'd be quite concerned about that, because you get the sense from, and you've seen it in some of the financial news coverage in the newspapers, that it feels to me like the Treasury are very much preparing to throw the banks under the bus in this regard. They're not going to bail out some of these loans, even where there's been an implicit Treasury backing where they've been taken out. Once you've got past that sort of 12-month initial period, the banks are on their own. I think you are going to see a lot of loans deteriorating, and you've actually seen that in some of the provisions that the banks were reporting at the half-year stage.
No, indeed. With this crisis, I think we're not even at the end of the beginning of this phase. So, but let's we're up to half an hour already, so we're getting to the end of our slot. A couple of things I just wanted to raise with you. You've got the extra hour. You've got more. You've got more room. You've got more slots to fill. But it does sound as though there are plenty of big companies engaging with you. How does someone sort of flag up a story that's going to catch your eye? What's the best way for people to get you know, their a guest flagged up for Ian King Live?
Well, to email Scott, Ganesh, and myself. Fairly straightforward. I'd sooner know about something than not know about it. Yeah, we get hundreds of emails every day. But I'd rather know about something than not know something about it. Scott, ultimately has, Scott decides on the running order of the program every morning. I'll have input into that process, but ultimately it's Scott's call. And so, ideally, in the first outset, they should just email Scott, Ganesh, and me.
Yeah. You have a pretty good idea who you're getting the day before?
I beg your pardon?
Do you have a pretty good idea of the running order the day before?
Reasonably so, yeah. And actually, I mean, since we went to an hour long, I mean, the way I would tend to work previously, where you'd have a vague idea who would be on in the 9:30 slot, and I'd sort of prep overnight for that as much as I could. For the 1:30 show, you'd hope it would be quite spontaneous and in response to the day's event. So I'm trying where possible to do a lot more prep overnight, because it's quite a detailed program. And for an hour, a detailed program with 6 or 7 interviews, where there may be quite a lot of specific information that I need to read up on. We do try and have a few things lined up overnight, or at least where I can read up on the background or the context of something and prepare for it in advance. And as I say, having this third producer on the show now means that someone's always going to be involved in forward planning to an extent, and we can give a lot more thought to sort of on diary events. So, for example, where you can see a company's got their results coming up, the pitch will probably come in from our side if we're keen on having them. And a little clue, actually, you can see the sort of things I'm interested in quite often. I still write a piece every day most days for the Sky News website, and quite often I will alight on a company that I'm interested in that I don't think is getting the attention that it should be, and we'll stick them up on the website, and that quite often leads to the company getting in touch and saying, "Oh, we didn't know you were interested. Can we, we'd be happy to come on the show and talk about this." And I can think of several FTSE 100 companies that fall into that bracket, and there'll be one going up later today in that vein as well that we'd love to have on the show. So do carry on watching the Sky News business pages, the Sky News website for that.
I'm just running people are flagged up during the set. We've got quite a few people with a focus on the investment community and the sort of ESG themes there. Is that something that's on your radar?
It has to be. I mean, it always was. It certainly was prior to going into the pandemic. And I mean, we've touched during this conversation on some of the things which are still very, very important, and which have probably assumed greater relevance and importance during the pandemic. So yes, it remains a key focus of what we're doing. But as I say, we do like to be just, company X saying we've just announced a new ESG policy. Would you like to talk about it? Well, not necessarily. It depends what it is. It has to be an initiative that's sufficiently eye-catching and of interest to our viewers and listeners that we're going to want to pick up on it. So I would say there, be considered, be thoughtful in terms of what you're doing.
One question about your international focus. You had 2 Frenchmen on the show this morning, but you are catering for an English market, or are you trying to address the global markets?
No, we're a global market. I mean, Sky News is on in, I think it's something like 115 countries around the world. So we're very, very, very big in Africa. We've got a very big audience in Africa. We've got a big following in the Gulf states. But I mean, my correspondence is from all over the world. I mean, I get people in touch who say that they watch the show in Australia. The show goes out. We've got a position on the EPG, the Electronic Program Guide, on Australian television, so you can actually watch the show going out live down under if you're an insomniac. And it's amazing. People do watch us from all over the world. As I say, we're on Apple TV in the United States, and obviously now we're part of the Comcast family. Our distribution has picked up right across the US. Obviously, Sky was a major pan-European player before, so anyone that is a Sky subscriber in Germany or Italy or Switzerland or Austria or Spain or any of the other markets in which we operate on continental Europe, they can watch us there. The Irish Republic, of course, is a very important market for us. So no, we are a global news channel. We're a global news platform, and we are very, very keen and very, very interested to talk to people wherever they may be in the world, and indeed we do so. And that's a key part what we do. I mean, I think that the days where you could be a UK business news outlet and be parochial and just, I mean, when I started out at the Telegraph many moons ago, and I used to share a flat with an old mate from university who was a bond trader, and he'd pick up the Telegraph, which was the paper I used to work for in those days, as I say, and he'd say, well, yes, let's see what happened in UK PLC yesterday. He said, you know, you guys carry nothing on the bond market. You don't carry much on overseas business. Well, that's really changed. Actually, I think the Telegraph is superb at doing that now. So it's crucial for us. Yeah, we are an international news outlet. We want to hear from people all over the world.
No, it's true. All the British newspapers have become more internationalist in the way they're covering the economic affairs. It's tough if you're trying to push small cap stocks in the London market, but no, the interest is on the global economy. Ian, we're very grateful for the time you've devoted to us today. Thank you very much for answering everybody's questions and giving us an insight into the new Ian King Live, relaunched at 10 o'clock every day. I think it's great news that I think it suits the agenda setting, and having that full hour will really allow you to get your teeth into some big issues. Not only that, keep other journalists employed is great. The business, the newspaper review as well. But Ian, thank you very much for joining us. And
and Michael, nothing wrong with small caps, by the way. Nothing wrong with small caps.
No, but a lot of the newspapers don't cover them anymore. So
well, we're still keen to hear from them when they've got something interesting to say.
Excellent. Anyway, Ian, thank you very much, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you. Cheers.